Hi, my name is Lulu Perez. I'll be presenting the intervention hypothesis for our project Burnout and Work-Life Balance in Undergraduate Students. This program integrates cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, and positive psychology with the goal to help full-time students manage their stress and potential burnout while they work full-time and study. I'm going to explain what the intervention is, how it's structured, and what outcomes we want to see from it. Over half of full-time students hold jobs, and nearly a third of them work more than 20 hours a week. This load ultimately increases stress and fatigue and often results to chronic exhaustion, loss of motivation, and emotional detachment. Our goal is to intervene early on to catch these early signs of burnout before they progress into potentially development of depression and possible suicidal thoughts as a result of the mental and physical stressors. So recent data shows also how physiological factors play into this. For example, sleep patterns disrupted as a result of stress and long hours are ultimately associated with burnout by increased cynicism, increased inefficacy, and poor sleep quality predicts these symptoms. This reinforces why intervention is important, not just to address the mental state, but also the physical state and this dual relationship. Our intervention is built on the frameworks of Bresso, which this study highlighted self-efficacy as the primary protective factor against burnout. CBT's efficacy in regulating emotions has also been shown with Ulas and Secker. And with Bresso, we see in this figure slide to the right that their intervention using their made CBT sessions ultimately resulted in increased self-efficacy by the end. This is the 5-session cycle educational program that we're going to implement. It will involve 8 to 10 participants led by a trained facilitator. Each session will last 60 minutes and it builds from the prior one. As we see here, the first session will be awareness and then restructuring, activation, mindfulness, resilience. And by the end of it, they'll complete the post-assessment, which will include the MBISS, PSS-10, self-efficacy scale. And these will be implemented before the first session as well. So in the end, we will compare the results. In the first session, students, they will learn to recognize the signs of burnout. These involve emotional fatigue, detachment, and loss of motivation. In terms of tools, they will use a stress map exercise to identify the patterns that they find in their work, school, and personal life that play into this burnout cycle. As we can see, they can start from any point, whether from first being tired that leads to decreased motivation, or for example, they were initially not as motivated because of this imbalance of work and stress, and that leads to chronic fatigue and decreased self-efficacy. And in the end, they'll reflect with the statement, I can recognize the first signs of burnout in my daily schedule. Session 2 will introduce cognitive restructuring, where students challenge possibly distorted thoughts. For example, I'll never catch up in class. And then they will work with the group to gather contradictory evidence that shows this is not a definite case, and they can reframe their negative thinking into, for example, a thought that they can take actionable step towards. For example, I can take small steps to get to where I want to be in class. This uses CBT's thought record technique, where they can practice turning self-critical statements into realistic and encouraging ones. In session 3, the focus is on restoring motivation through behavioral action. They'll create a time balance plan, as we see in the charts. For example, they'll identify what activities are energy draining versus energy restoring, and what actions they can take to facilitate that. Session 4 introduces mindfulness practices. These will involve breathing exercises, for example, guided breathing, that they can perform as a group. They will also participate in the group discussion about how multitasking and deadlines can increase their anxiety, and they can share techniques on how to recenter their attention on the present. This session really aims to strengthen their emotional regulation and not only mental but also physiological calmness through breathing. Finally, session 5 is going to integrate all of these skills. They're going to review what CBT tools, such as reframing, mindfulness, or scheduling, ultimately results in being resilient and recognizing which tools they have in case they relapse and preventing that relapse as well. Ultimately, the reflection, it combines all of these tools to give them confidence and sustaining balance even after completing the program. Ultimately, with this intervention, we hypothesize that participants that complete all 5 sessions will show lower burnout and stress, higher self-efficacy, and coping flexibility. This is measured with the MAS-like burnout inventory, perceived stress scale, and academic self-efficacy scale presented earlier. And as you see with the graph, this is a possible results that we would want to illustrate, with initial pre-assessment having lower self-efficacy and higher rates of stress and perceived stress and burnout. And then afterwards, we see decreased stress and burnout with increased self-efficacy. Overall, this approach reframes burnout prevention and fosters sustainable flourishing. Thank you for watching. This concludes the intervention hypothesis section. Additionally, this is the references portion. Thank you.